All right, learner, welcome back for another deep dive. And, as always, this is crafted just for you. You're here because you want to learn, you want to expand your knowledge base without getting overwhelmed. And that's really our mission here today. And today we're going to be looking at this massive area, this vitally important area of health and well-being. We've got a whole bunch of really cool material lined up, including some excerpts from Mukesh Bansal's Hacking Health.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this with you. One of the things that I'm really struck by with this material is how broad it is.
Hmm.
We're not just looking at the latest fad diet or the hot new workout.
Yeah.
This is a deep dive into the history of how we got here and some of the most exciting scientific discoveries about what it means to be healthy.
Yeah, and one of the first things that really jumps out at me is this kind of contradiction that we seem to be living in. On the one hand, it seems like modern life is throwing more health challenges at us than ever before, but on the other hand, we have access to more knowledge, more tools to address these challenges than any generation in history.
It's really a fascinating paradox, and the sources we've got here today really lay that out really beautifully.
Yeah.
The very things that have given us these comfortable middle class lifestyles that we enjoy,
Mm.
readily available goods, all these incredibly enticing advertisements.
Right.
They're actually kind of undermining our health in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And think about the sheer volume of processed snacks and sugary drinks. They're just constantly being marketed to us. These things packed with high fructose corn syrup that are cheap to produce. They make things taste hyper palatable.
Mm.
But the sources suggest they're really having a detrimental effect on our bodies, and it often starts really early,
Yeah.
in childhood even.
Yeah, it's relentless, and it's not just the things that we're consuming. The sources really point to this massive shift towards sedentary behavior. We used to talk about kids being glued to the TV.
Right.
But now with endless streaming options and social media constantly vying for our attention on these smartphones that we carry around everywhere, we're in this near constant state of content consumption. It's like the couch potato of the 80s looks positively athletic
Right.
compared to where we are now.
I think that's such a great point. It's like, that device in your hand can pull you away from a meal, from a conversation, even a walk outside.
Yeah.
So it's this, constant digital tether that often comes at a real cost to our physical activity levels and our ability to really be present,
Right.
in our lives in the moment. And so it's kind of a subtle but really powerful force, I think, that's shaping our health these days.
But here's where it gets really interesting is that while we're facing all of these modern lifestyle headwinds, the sources also point to these truly incredible advancements that are happening in health science.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about serious researchers who are tackling the fundamental process of aging itself.
Yeah.
This used to be the stuff of myths and legends, the search for the fountain of youth. And now the idea that aging, as we understand it, might not be entirely inevitable is something that is being seriously explored. And that's a massive shift in perspective.
It's really huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about, it connects to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
We have this ancient, deep-seated desire for better health and longer lifespans,
Yeah.
colliding head-on with this modern environment that's often actively working against those goals.
Right.
And into that gap steps this huge industry promising these rapid solutions, magical superfoods, miracle pills, and really playing on our innate desire for an easy path.
Oh, the allure of the quick fix in health.
Absolutely.
And our author definitely has some opinions about this, particularly around how the sugar lobby, based on some very questionable science, managed to demonize saturated fat for so long. And this personal anecdote about, their own regret about giving up ghee, something that was so central to their cultural heritage because of this whole low-fat craze that really brings home how easily we can be swayed by, popular trends and powerful commercial interests, even when it goes against traditional wisdom.
Yeah, it really raises the question for you, the learner, how do you navigate all this noise? And the sources actually provide a really compelling starting point for that. And it involves looking back for hundreds of thousands of years before agriculture. Our hunter-gatherer ancestors thrived.
Right.
Their way of life, characterized by constant movement and whole unprocessed foods, offers some really fundamental clues about what our bodies are actually designed for.
This idea of back to basics, it's a recurring theme throughout the sources. And, when we talk about basics, Movement is absolutely fundamental. Our bodies are not designed to be static. Just think about your feet.
Mm.
The sources point out that they have this incredibly intricate network of muscles all working together to allow us to balance, walk, run, jump. Every part of us is built for motion.
And what's fascinating is that you see this use it or lose it principle in full effect.
Yeah.
If we lead consistently sedentary lives,
Yeah.
our bodies start to shed those capabilities, our endurance diminishes, our flexibility decreases.
Right.
But the really encouraging news is that barring a small kind of age tax,
Yeah.
uh, we have a remarkable ability to regain those abilities through consistent effort.
That's good news.
And our bodies are incredibly adaptable and they respond really powerfully to regular physical activity.
And speaking of things that we may have historically misunderstood, let's talk about sleep. For a good chunk of human history, sleep was viewed as this mysterious, almost unproductive state.
Mm-hmm.
A waste of time, as our sources put it.
Yeah.
People lamented spending, a third of their life seemingly unconscious.
Right.
But now the science is incredibly clear. They couldn't have been more wrong.
Yeah.
Our sources really emphasize just how critical sleep is for good health. It plays an essential role in physical recovery, in consolidating memories and learning, and even in maintaining a robust immune system. It's not just this passive state of inactivity, it's a period of intense repair and rejuvenation happening on multiple levels.
And it's not just about the physical body either.
Right.
The sources make a really compelling case for how interconnected the mind and body really are.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really effectively address one in isolation.
Right.
Improving your physical health often necessitates addressing your mental well-being and vice versa.
Right.
They're far too intricately linked to be treated as separate entities, and that actually leads us to another really crucial element that the sources touch on, and that's purpose.
Purpose. How does having a sense of purpose factor into our physical health? That sounds more like a philosophical concept.
Well, it's interesting because several studies highlighted in our sources show a really direct correlation between having a strong sense of purpose in life
Mhm.
and experiencing greater longevity and better overall health. If you feel like you have something meaningful to strive for, you're simply more likely to take care of yourself. It's also why, unfortunately, we sometimes see retirees who lose that strong sense of purpose that was often tied to their careers and experience kind of more rapid decline in their health.
Right. It gives you a fundamental reason to prioritize your well-being,
Absolutely.
a reason to keep investing in yourself. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something that we all have a very personal relationship with, and that's food and nutrition. And right away, our sources really challenge this almost obsessive focus on simply counting calories.
Yeah, and it's interesting to look at where that obsession even came from. The origin story of the calorie, of this nutritional metric, is fascinating.
Mm.
It started as a unit of heat measurement. Back in the late 19th century, there was this experiment where a student literally climbed into a calorimeter,
Wow.
and scientists measured his energy output after he ate different foods.
That's wild.
And that's essentially how the calorie became the dominant way that we think about food energy.
Yeah.
We turned eating into this mathematical equation.
But the sources are really clear. It's not just about the numbers.
Right.
The quality of the food we consume matters just as much, if not more. And this brings us back to the significant influence of the food industry and advertising. They've played a massive role in shaping what we perceive as healthy.
Yeah.
Think back to when margarine was heavily marketed as this lighter, healthier alternative to butter.
All right.
Now, of course, we know about the harmful trans fats that it often contained.
Right. Or consider the whole industry built around canned fruit juices
Right.
that are, they're advertised as being healthy because they contain fruit,
Right.
but they're loaded with preservatives and, significant amounts of added sugar.
Right.
And so it's really, the sources really highlight how our perceptions of what's good for us have been, they've been molded by these commercial interests, often to the detriment of our actual health.
It really makes you think about how drastically different ancestral eating patterns were. Our author recalls a time when they could only eat certain vegetables like bindi or sarsen kasag when they were actually in season, fresh and sourced locally. Now we have access to almost any food at any time of year,
Right.
but at what cost to our health and to our understanding of food?
Yeah, and I think it also underscores, these really significant psychological and cultural aspects of food that extend, far beyond mere nutrition.
Right.
Comfort foods, these deeply ingrained family traditions around meals. These are really powerful.
Mm.
Food isn't just fuel for our bodies. It's often deeply intertwined with our state of mind, our moods, and our emotions. Sometimes we just crave something familiar and comforting, even if it goes against, the latest nutrition advice that we've
Right.
heard.
That makes sense. And that brings us to some of the specific health hacks that are mentioned in our sources. And one that really stands out is this directive to ditch the sugar. The sources are pretty unequivocal about this. Added sugar offers no health benefits and can actually wreak havoc on both our physical and mental well-being.
And it's fascinating to look at how our bodies actually process different types of sugar.
Hmm.
We've got simple sugars like glucose and fructose. We've got more complex disaccharides like sucrose, which is table sugar, lactose, which is the sugar in milk. And then there's that often vilified cheap ingredient high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
While they all have, slightly different metabolic pathways, the overarching message from the sources is pretty clear. We need to be really minimizing our intake of added sugar.
So what are some simple, actionable guidelines for building a more balanced diet that our sources suggest?
Well, they really emphasize incorporating nutrient-dense whole foods, things like pulses, lentils, beans. They really strongly advise avoiding processed foods and sugary drinks as much as possible. Black coffee and tea actually get a nod for their flavonoid and antioxidant content, with the practical caveat about timing your consumption, so that it doesn't disrupt your sleep.
Right.
The importance of prioritizing local and seasonal foods for their nutritional value and flavor is highlighted. Spices, fermented foods are encouraged for their beneficial micronutrients and positive impact on gut health.
Okay.
And surprisingly, the sources even suggest that occasionally skipping a meal can be beneficial,
Well, yeah.
giving your digestive system a bit of a break.
So that's quite a shift away from this rigid calorie counting, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the sources actually suggest that the whole calories in, calories out mantra is an oversimplification.
Mm.
They really advocate for, focusing on a well-balanced intake of whole foods, really tuning into your natural hunger and satiety cues,
Hmm.
and perhaps being a little bit more mindful of, the frequency of your meals. And there's even some discussion in the sources about the potential downsides of excessive grain consumption and the potential benefits of, incorporating gluten-free alternatives like red or brown rice and,
Yeah.
and various millets into your diet. And of course, let's not overlook the reappearance of ghee clarified butter as a healthy fat with antioxidant properties.
Yeah.
It's almost like a redemption story for a traditionally used food.
Right. And speaking of the gut, our sources really introduced it as essentially the second brain,
Right.
really emphasizing this profound connection to our moods and our emotions. That old saying about having butterflies in your stomach or trust of your gut feeling takes on a whole new literal meaning when you consider this connection.
It really does. And what's fascinating is that the role of the gut microbiota.
The what?
The gut microbiota. So that's this, vast and complex community of trillions of bacteria that reside within our digestive system.
Hmm.
Our modern diets, often high in processed foods, low in fiber, along with the widespread use of antibiotics, can negatively impact the diversity and resilience of this microbial ecosystem. And so emerging research now really suggests that probiotics, which introduce beneficial bacteria, can have a really positive impact on even things like mental health conditions like depression and anxiety.
So it seems like nourishing our gut is about far more than just digestion.
Oh, absolutely.
It's fundamental to our overall physical and mental well-being.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about intermittent fasting and this whole concept of detox.
Okay.
So intermittent fasting, it actually has a surprisingly long history.
Yeah.
With historical figures like Hippocrates and Aristotle even advocating for its benefits.
Wow.
The sources explain that it essentially mimics more ancestral eating patterns where there were these natural periods of fasting between meals just based on food availability. And modern research suggests that this practice can have benefits for blood sugar regulation and fat metabolism.
Now, what about detox diets? They're incredibly popular these days, promising to cleanse your system.
Yeah, the sources express a degree of skepticism towards a lot of these commercially marketed detox diets, often viewing them as, clever marketing strategies with limited, solid scientific backing.
Hmm.
However, they do acknowledge that our bodies are equipped with this highly sophisticated detoxification system, primarily involving the liver, the
Yeah.
kidneys,
Yeah.
other organs, and the key is to support these natural processes through adequate hydration, perhaps the use of steam therapies, regular exercise, and sufficient good quality sleep. These extreme forms of detox that involve severe calorie restriction or excessive supplementation can actually be counterproductive and even harmful.
Yeah. It's all about balance, isn't it?
It seems like it. Let's move on to this crucial area of fitness and recovery.
Hmm.
Our modern lifestyles are so dramatically different from the physically demanding lives that our ancestors led.
Oh, absolutely. The Industrial Revolution, in a lot of ways has been about inventing ways to minimize physical labor.
Uh-huh.
But our sources point to some really interesting research suggesting that our brains actually evolved in conjunction with locomotion.
Okay.
Movement isn't just good for our muscles and bones, it's fundamentally linked to how our brains function optimally. Even our closest evolutionary relatives,
Mhm.
chimpanzees, while they will conserve energy when they can engage in really full body movements when they're active.
And our author shares a personal journey through various forms of exercise, from bodybuilding to long distance running to CrossFit, eventually leading to the creation of Keltel. And it really highlights the importance of finding physical activities that you genuinely enjoy and that keep you consistently engaged.
And the example of the Tarahumara tribe, who are renowned for their ability to run barefoot for these incredibly long distances as an integral part of their culture without the kind of formal training that Western athletes undergo, really underscores how a naturally active lifestyle can condition the body in these really profound ways.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about having some specific running gene. It's about consistent movement being woven into your daily life.
And the benefits of exercise extend far beyond just physical strength and endurance, don't they? Our sources talk about how crucial physical activity is for brain health. Improving synaptic plasticity. That's the brain's ability to form new connections and boosting the production of BDNF,
Right.
brain-derived or neurotrophic factor, a key protein that supports the growth and survival of brain cells. So it's vital for learning and memory.
Exactly. And cardiovascular exercise has these significant benefits for your whole circulatory system, strengthening the heart muscle, helping to clear the arteries, leading to a lower resting heart rate, which is a really strong indicator of overall cardiovascular health. And even weightlifting, which stimulates muscle growth through these microscopic tears that then repair and rebuild stronger,
Right.
has these profound metabolic benefits.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to trace how the concept of bodybuilding has evolved, from these early individual strongmen flexing for audiences
Right.
to, the highly organized sport and the ubiquitous presence of gyms that we see today.
Right.
And our sources also make this really important distinction between flexibility and mobility.
Yeah, flexibility is more about the passive range of motion in a joint, often achieved through stretching,
Okay.
and sometimes requiring an external force. Mobility, on the other hand, is the ability to actively control movement through a full range of motion, engaging your muscles and your nervous system. It's about stability, coordination, and control during these functional movements.
Yeah.
And it's arguably even more important than just being passively flexible. The traditional fitness disciplines like yoga often incorporate this more holistic approach to movement.
Now, we can't really talk about fitness in the modern context without touching on the aesthetic goals that are so prevalent, especially with social media, constantly showcasing these seemingly perfect six-packs and beach bodies.
Right. And the sources do offer a word of caution against fixating on these often unrealistic aesthetic ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Achieving a very low body fat percentage, which is often necessary for that extreme muscle definition, can actually be unhealthy, particularly for women, potentially leading to hormonal imbalances and, even increased anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to focus on overall holistic wellness rather than just these superficial and often unattainable goals.
There's also mention of EMS, or electromuscle stimulation, as a technological tool that can potentially boost the gains from strength training. Even for individuals who are recovering from injuries or for older adults, it's fascinating how technology is increasingly being integrated into the realm of fitness.
Yeah.
But the crucial counterpart to all this physical activity is recovery, which our sources really emphasize is just as important as the workouts themselves.
Absolutely. The actual physiological adaptations and the strength gains from training, they primarily occur during the periods of rest and recovery. Exercise intentionally disrupts the body's natural state of balance or homeostasis.
Right.
And recovery is the process by which the body returns to that equilibrium, repairing the microscopic damage in the muscles and adapting to the stress that it's been subjected to.
And our sources mention various ways to monitor your recovery, from paying attention to your mood and your energy levels to tracking more objective metrics like resting heart rate and heart rate variability, or HRV.
Right.
And there are also a range of different recovery methods, discuss things like foam rolling, various forms of stretching, with some cautions about overdoing static stretching before exercise, compression therapy, and the use of saunas and steam baths.
It's also really important to be aware of repetitive stress injuries, or RSIs, which can develop from performing the same movements repeatedly, whether in your training or even in your daily work.
Right.
Ensuring balanced loading across different muscle groups and maintaining proper form during exercise are really crucial for preventing these types of injuries.
So it's clear that fitness is this really multifaceted area. encompassing not just the workouts themselves, but also, these vitally important aspects of recovery and really listening to the signals that your body is sending. Now, let's shift our focus to an area that has historically been shrouded in stigma, but is increasingly being recognized as, fundamental to our overall well-being, and that's mental health.
Yeah, and the sources really highlight this stark contrast and how we often perceive physical and mental health.
Hmm.
If you sustain a physical injury, you generally receive sympathy for clear pathways for treatment.
Hmm.
But when it comes to mental health challenges, there's often still a tendency towards dismissal,
Hmm.
minimizing the experience, offering well-meaning but ultimately unhelpful advice like just try to cheer up.
Right.
And so this lingering stigma is a real barrier to people seeking the help they need.
Thankfully, our sources note that things are gradually changing. There's increasing public awareness, more open and honest discussions are happening, and there's a wider range of support options becoming available, from various forms of therapy and medication to complementary practices like meditation and yoga. However, the sources also emphasize that mental health is incredibly complex, and there are rarely these simple one-size-fits-all solutions.
What works effectively for one individual may not work at all for another. And, unlike physical health, where we can often identify, more direct causes and corresponding treatments, mental health is influenced by this really intricate interplay of factors, our genetic predispositions, our lifestyle choices, the delicate balance of our brain chemistry, past traumatic experiences, and even the health of our gut microbiome.
The role of stress is also highlighted as being particularly significant, and our sources make this useful distinction between eustress, that's that positive, motivating level of challenge and distress, which is the chronic negative stress that can really take a toll on both our physical and mental health, contributing to systemic inflammation and increasing our vulnerability to various illnesses.
And here's another really practical health hack from our sources: take a walk in nature. Even relatively short periods spent in green spaces have been shown to have a really positive impact on reducing stress levels. The Japanese practice of shinrin-yoku, often translated as forest bathing, really encourages you to intentionally engage all of your senses while you're immersed in nature.
The fundamental importance of social connection in alleviating stress and promoting overall mental and physical health is also underscored in our sources. We live in this age of increasing digital connectivity, but ironically, this can sometimes detract from meaningful real life interactions. And so, investing in nurturing strong and healthy relationships is really more crucial than ever for our well being.
Our sources briefly touch upon the pervasive issue of depression and the often long-lasting effects of trauma, even referencing the important work of Bessel van der Kolk in understanding how traumatic experiences can leave these really deep and lasting psychological scars, and the rising rates of loneliness and its, really significant negative consequences for both mental and physical health are a growing concern in a lot of societies.
Another powerful health hack that's mentioned is simply to find gratitude. Regularly taking a moment to acknowledge and appreciate the good things in your life can have a surprisingly significant positive impact on your overall sense of well-being. And, when it comes to seeking professional help for mental health concerns, the sources really strongly encourage it, emphasizing that engaging in therapy isn't just for times of crisis. It can be incredibly beneficial for building resilience, developing coping mechanisms, and simply gaining a deeper understanding of yourself.
The sources also offer some really practical and compassionate advice for supporting someone in your life who might be struggling with their mental health. Things like listening attentively without judgment, trying to truly understand their experience, being honest and genuine in your interactions, remembering the small things that might make a difference down, to them being realistic about the often nonlinear nature of recovery, and perhaps most importantly, knowing when it's appropriate to gently encourage them to seek professional help.
And the sources also briefly acknowledge, the significant prevalence of mental health issues, specifically within India.
So it's clear that mental health is no longer something that should be whispered about in the shadows.
Right.
It's an absolutely integral component of our overall health and well-being that deserves our full attention, our understanding, and our care. Finally, let's turn our gaze towards the future and delve into this fascinating and rapidly evolving realm of longevity and the future of health.
Our sources begin by describing the often gradual decline in physiological function that we typically associate with aging, but then they pivot to these really intriguing examples of incredibly long-lived organisms in the natural world. Things like certain species of whales and very old trees, which have really inspired the scientific search for what are often termed longevity genes. The sources discuss several prominent theories of aging, ranging from the accumulation of damage from free radicals to the shortening of telomeres, those those protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes
Right,
and mitochondrial dysfunction.
right.
And then this complex concept of longevity genes and key cellular pathways like mTOR and autophagy is introduced, even mentioning the effects of the drug rapamycin and extending lifespan in laboratory studies. It really starts to feel like the line between science fiction and tangible scientific possibility is becoming increasingly blurred.
Yeah. It's a really exciting time to be exploring these topics. The ongoing debate of nature versus nurture is also touched upon with the critical role of epigenetics being highlighted. That is, how our environment and our lifestyle choices can actually influence how our genes are expressed, essentially switching certain genes on or off. And the increasingly affordable cost and greater accessibility of genetic testing are opening up the potential for these truly personalized health and wellness strategies, tailored to an individual's unique genetic makeup.
But the concept of blue zones, those geographically distinct regions around the world where people consistently live these remarkably long and healthy lives, is also discussed along with some of their common Harahachibu. The practice of eating until you're only about 80% full, and the relatively recent scientific notion of adult neurogenesis, the brain's ability to generate new neurons even in adulthood,
Wow.
really underscores the importance of lifelong learning and cognitive stimulation for maintaining brain health as we age.
There's even a perspective presented in the sources that challenges the traditional view of aging as this inevitable process, proposing instead that it might be more accurately viewed as a disease that could potentially be treated and perhaps even partially reversed in the future.
And our author shares some personal anecdotes about using wearable technology like the Oura Ring and Whoop Band to gain these really granular insights into their own sleep patterns and heart rate variability, which in turn led to positive lifestyle changes like optimizing meal timing and increasing cardiovascular exercise.
It's really incredible how these technologies can provide such detailed, personalized data about our own bodies.
It is, and this fascinating idea of strategically harnessing the body's natural stress response, that surge of cortisol to actually enhance learning and memory, is also discussed, mentioning techniques like engaging in exercise before studying or taking a nap after learning new information.
The evolving world of nootropic substances that may potentially enhance cognitive function with examples like ginseng and brahmi is also touched upon alongside the profound impact of meditation practices on the brain, with studies even showing measurable reductions in the amygdala's reactivity to stress in long-term meditators, like Young-Emingure Rinpoche.
And then there's this burgeoning field of biohacking, which involves using various often unconventional methods to intentionally introduce artificial stressors to the body in order to trigger positive physiological adaptations. Really pushing the boundaries of what's considered normal. Even ancient practices like the inner fire, tumo meditation, used by some high-performing individuals, are being explored for their potential applications in enhancing resilience and focus.
Looking further ahead, the future of healthcare seems incredibly promising, with the development of restorative and preventative therapies like stem cell research and interventions targeting white signaling pathways, the advancement of regenerative medicine using exosomes, and even the potential for highly personalized biohacking through cutting-edge technologies like biosensor ink tattoos that can continuously monitor various biological markers.
It all seems to point toward a future where we have significantly more agency and control over our own health and longevity than ever before imaginable, and our sources ultimately remind us that adopting healthy habits isn't just about trying to extend our lifespan, it's fundamentally about enhancing the quality of our lives,
hmm
making them more enjoyable, and allowing us to maintain our vitality and our engagement with the world well into our older years, with numerous inspiring examples of successful and active older individuals defying these conventional expectations of aging.
And bringing it full circle, learner, we've seen throughout this deep dive that while modern life undeniably presents us with some unique challenges to our health and well-being, we are also incredibly fortunate to have access to an unprecedented wealth of knowledge and a growing array of powerful tools. And ultimately, achieving and maintaining good health is this multifaceted journey that is very much within your reach.
So, learner, as you've taken this deep dive with us today, I want you to consider just one simple principle or one practical tool that really resonated with you from our conversation. What's one small, manageable change that you feel like you could realistically incorporate into your own life, starting perhaps even today on your personal journey towards greater vitality and improved health? Remember, even seemingly small adjustments, when consistently applied, can have a surprisingly significant and positive impact over time. And we encourage you to explore further based on whatever aspects of our discussion sparked your curiosity the most.
What's truly exciting, learner, is that this is an ongoing process of discovery, both for you personally and for the scientific community as a whole.
Yeah.
The more we understand these intricate workings of our bodies and minds, the more empowered we become to cultivate healthier, more fulfilling lives.
Thanks for diving deep with us, learner. Until our next exploration, keep exploring and stay curious.
See ya.